Welcome to the film analysis. Today with Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire by Zack Snyder. Many have laughed at this film. A second is due to be released in the spring and a third has already been announced. And it's all on Netflix, where this film has been in the top 10 for several weeks now. But when so many people laugh at the film, they forget about an even bigger audience who will consume this film completely unironically and be very happy with it. And Netflix obviously knows exactly what it's doing when Snyder is given so much money to produce such rubbish. Hardly any other film has captured the zeitgeist as well as Rebel Moon in recent months. And that's also the problem with the film. We must talk about fan fiction. Rebel Moon represents a second-hand film. Nevertheless, we ask ourselves, what is it about? It would suffice to say that Snyder once besieged George Lucas because he wanted to persuade him to allow him, Snyder, to make his own Star Wars film, which was somewhat based on the film Seven Samurai. George Lucas was not enthusiastic about it, but now Snyder has directed such a film anyway, even if it's lacking Star Wars characters. But you can still recognize everything from the Star Wars universe. Roughly speaking, Rebel Moon concerns a great disorder in the galaxy. The royal family has been killed. An agrarian state has been established on the moon belt, where agriculture is successfully practiced. The images remind us of our world around 1800, with shots of golden ears of corn, women and men that seem to have sprung from modern right-wing posters, but one stands out from the crowd: Cora, played by Sofia Boutella. She is a kind of Tomb Raider, Amazonian woman. She joins the peasants on the attack when a warship lands and all the generals and soldiers in Nazi chic uniforms disembark and want to subjugate everything. If this reminds you of Iron Sky, you are right. A battle against the Empire must be won, but first many characters from all sorts of planets must join forces, the Seven Samurais principle. On the respective planets, Snyder mixes together everything from the pop culture of the past decades, sometimes resembling Blade Runner, then Matrix 2 and 3. Of course, the second Star Wars trilogy by George Lucas is also referenced extensively in Rebel Moon. You wouldn't have thought that it could get any worse, that you could produce even more horrific images, but Snyder succeeds. So it's a recruitment film. Assembling everyone takes a while. Once it's done, the first part is already over. The sequel will neither provide any thought nor can we expect any remarkable shots. If your people need you, then you must fight. A typical Rebel Moon sentence. Zack Snyder is not known for his taste, especially obvious when these Nazi chic men attack the peasant women. Rebel Moon's characters tend to fulfill a social duty, having to serve someone, the kingdom, the empire, the peasants, whoever. You must try to have a goal in mind, and if it's not in the abstract, then you must have someone by your side, someone you love, and that you are prepared to fight for, to sacrifice everything for. With Star Wars, George Lucas has created a postmodern work quoting endlessly from various genres, legends and myths, and yet Lucas has succeeded in creating iconic characters that have themselves spawned epigones. Figures that we remember immediately just by mentioning their name. At least that was the case in the old trilogy by George Lucas. However, Rebel Moon fails in that regard. Snyder does try to create iconic characters, but he barely achieves a copy of a copy. Snyder further lacks cinematic language. Dialogues explain to us what happens next or what has happened, and then there are cliched images telling us exactly what we must think, heavily featured in our cultural memory. We only must call them up briefly to recollect how the story continues. And so, at a moment when we are shocked, Snyder presents us a hand with seeds, which drops everything in shock, with the seed dripping down to the ground in slow motion, of course. On the various planets, we witness spider creatures, martial arts fights, gladiators, arenas, and Lord of the Rings is also referenced wherever possible. But why is Rebel Moon so interesting as a phenomenon? There has been an incredible development in fan fiction in recent years. There are now thousands and thousands of fan fiction publications that are very successful. These publications are mainly advertised on TikTok, the so-called book talk. There you can read novels in which some Harry Potter characters have love stories, and it goes on for 15, 20 or even 30 novels. And these books are selling like hotcakes. At the same time, fan fiction productions on YouTube show up. The well-known films are retold repeatedly with new characters. As AI enables us to generate images, fan fiction is spreading more and more easily. Interestingly, fan fiction is already completely established in many parts of society and is consumed for hours on end. Every day. Bookshops are now full of tables with book talk where all these fan fiction books are placed. Zack Snyder is simply tapping into this trend, engaging in blockbusterization. But the reception attitude changes when we see multi-million-dollar fan fiction from the hand of a well-known director. Even from a director like Snyder, we expect originality. Fan fiction precisely disposes of this very originality. All it really does is rehash the existing. That's why the reception now is so strange. If the work could only pass as fan fiction, there would be no problem with it. But Rebel Moon irritates as a director like Snyder presumably creates something unique. Rebel Moon continues to spin the same set pieces, tropes and characters. The aesthetics are familiar. Characters with tentacles, triple chins, a kind of cute robot, a bit of Tomb Raider, and a few men who look a bit like Kit Harington. The phenomenon of fanfiction can also be called the democratization of art. Just as anyone can be a journalist online today, anyone can be an author or filmmaker. Initially a good development, since the classic gatekeeper system has prevented truth, beauty and goodness on many occasions. At the same time, however, a gatekeeper system has also preserved quality standards. This applies to journalism as well as art. Now, however, everything has taken on a life of its own. We should not be quick to call for a return to the gatekeeper system, as the philosopher Jürgen Habermas did in relation to journalism, who now wants to get rid of wasted noises in political discourse, Habermas said. And we can also speak of wasted images when we look at Rebel Moon, but the achievements of democratization should not be rolled back. Instead, we should educate an audience capable of distinguishing between good and bad journalism, between good art and bad art, or even worse, art by the likes of Snyder or Book Talk. Trash today seems to be ennobled by success. Success becomes recognized. It is successful because it is successful. The culture industry is entangled in these tautologies and it remains on the spot. Quality criteria play less and less of a role. What has emerged through the formation of the canon, what high culture has produced, no longer applies today. The canon has always had to be criticized. High cultural standards have always had to be criticized. But by simply discarding all standards, by simply regurgitating that what is already there and constantly putting it through new utilization mills, you gain nothing. We see this above all in the build-up of tension. Films are less and less about creating suspense, about producing an unexpected twist that gives us an insight. Instead, the films always fall back on what has already been done 1,000 times before. Unsurprisingly, in Rebel Moon, two people still must face each other on a platform high above the ground and fight a duel. We find these tropes in all the Marvel and DC films, and that's why Snyder doesn't leave them out. We are dealing with a life in quotation, a second-hand life. Yes, this Rebel Moon is much more diverse than the Star Wars series and is also more diverse than Seven Samurai, but that doesn't lead anywhere. Seven Samurai achieved a transfer, paying homage to the Western genre. Seven Samurai gained quite the recognition and finally influenced the Western genre then. But all we are seeing in Rebel Moon is a pointless colorfulness, as we can also observe in the political arena. Just think how colorful the storming of the US Capitol was. It is also interesting to note where we find ourselves in these films, somewhere between high-tech futurism and agribusiness. That's where the world is currently oscillating ideologically. Take Argentina, a country where agriculture is still hugely important. At the same time, we have a crypto clown as president there and many crypto bros from all over the world worshipping this president. Or let's think about how agriculture is portrayed today. People are still trying to recall images from the 18th and 19th centuries, even though we are already dealing with state-of-the-art technology. And when we look at the images, we can say everything is infinitely flat. All we see is image generation. Not a single image has any depth. There is no longer any anchoring, which admittedly sounds strange. After all, film is not reality, and the old Star Wars series meant scenery, magic and illusion theater. But here something was filmed, focal length, and the appropriate lighting played a role. The images we see in Rebel Moon are completely detached from this reality. They could all be generated, or perhaps they already are. Who can say? As a result, everything we see loses its appeal. Even the supposedly spectacular. We are currently experiencing an interesting race on TikTok. On the one hand, the human fan fiction producers such as BookTok, and on the other, AI systems generating images and films instantly. In Rebel Moon, both opponents fall into one. We can no longer tell the difference. As a result, will many more films follow? Will fan fiction continuously shape the streaming and cinema business? Fanfiction tropes have long since found their way into all blockbusters, be it Marvel, DC or other productions from recent years. These fanfiction tropes have long characterized all the stories and the visual language. Snyder has taken it to the extreme by telling us a straight way that he is producing a fan fiction film. You can't assume that such experiments will be made too often, but fan fiction will spread everywhere. This type of storytelling will radically change films or is already happening. And we are not seeing playful postmodernism here, which comes up with subtle jokes, features irony, tries to take modernity to another level. We experience postmodernism in the literal sense as a phase of post, as after the modernism. However, this phase has not internalized the lessons of modernism and continues to move forward. This postmodernism simply crosses out modernity and all its achievements, as if this modernity had never existed. This postmodernism is therefore also the return of pre-modernism, with the only difference being that the era drags certain aesthetics and technical advances with it. And that's what we see here. Laser swords, spaceships, and wooden huts and trees in all one picture. Ideologically, we have also returned to darker times, which admittedly have also repeatedly surfaced in the modern era. And this is particularly evident in the cult of death that predominates in Rebel Moon, believing in something worth dying for, it says, or that this would have been a wonderful place to die. A desire to lead a heroic life, to die a heroic death, runs through this film. And if we look around the world, to Russia, China, America, Germany too, people everywhere are trying to recruit young people and make it palatable to them again that it is sweet and honorable to die for a higher goal, be it for the people, the nation, freedom, honor, our values. In this respect, Rebel Moon is a film that works globally. Rebel Moon is exceptional in that a well-known director produces fan fiction, which is what the non-established creators on YouTube and TikTok usually do. But Rebel Moon is otherwise not exceptional. The film bundles for Netflix what is known anyway. And everywhere we watch, but don't see. It would be nice if you would like to support the film analysis financially. You can do so via my bank account or PayPal. Also, you can find me on Patreon. Thank you very much.